My name is Avram Friedman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Canary Coalition.
Yay!
And thanks all for coming today. And I want to especially thank the other organizations who have helped organize this, the Wilderness Society, the Jackson-Macon Conservation Alliance, the Western North Carolina Alliance, as well as the Canary Coalition. And we have several other people who will speak here from those organizations and others, a few other individuals as well. Climate change is real. It's mostly man-made and it's urgent. It's not something that's going to happen in the future. It's happening right now. The Arctic ice is melting more rapidly than anyone anticipated, even within the scientific community that warned that this was going to happen. Sea levels are rising. The oceans are becoming acidified from carbon saturation, threatening the world's coral reefs and other aquatic life we depend on to help feed the growing global population. Extreme weather conditions, droughts, floods, super hurricanes are becoming more common and more extreme. We need to act quickly to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or we're going to run out of time to avoid the worst consequences of climate change, if we haven't already waited too long. That's why we're gathered here today, and that's why thousands are expected to converge on Raleigh next weekend to deliver this message. This is the message people everywhere will be delivering to state governments soon, and to the federal government in Washington, D.C., and to elected and non-elected government officials everywhere in the world, until they all wake up, regardless of their political parties, and realize that our planet's life support system is malfunctioning and that we have to act with great urgency right now to preserve a livable world for our children and grandchildren, and very possibly even for ourselves in this generation. Many environmental organizations and individuals have come together to plan the statewide Climate Convergence on Raleigh. And we've agreed to a platform that outlines some public policy steps North Carolina can take to substantially address our own carbon footprint and set an example that others can follow outside of our state. The largest part of our carbon footprint is related to wasteful energy consumption and the amount of fossil fuels burned to produce the energy we sometimes thoughtlessly use or use inefficiently. So a sizable group of state legislators worked with a dozen environmental organizations this year to introduce the Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill, House Bill 401, and its companion in the Senate, S-362. This bill would restructure utility rates so that efforts at conservation and investment in energy efficiency are rewarded with lower rates, while wasteful energy use is discouraged with higher rates. Economics drives real change, and this is the way economics can be used in a positive manner to drive vast reductions in energy consumption as we create new industries and jobs in the fields of energy efficiency and safe, clean, greenhouse gas-free renewable energy technologies. One of the priorities of the Climate Convergence on Raleigh is to urge the passage of House Bill 401 in the North Carolina General Assembly. It doesn't matter who is in charge of the General Assembly right now or how their politics may be perceived. This is the message they have to hear from thousands of us right now. A second piece of legislation we're promoting in this session is the Appalachian Mountains Preservation Act, or House Bill 613. This bill will prohibit the construction of new coal-burning power plants in North Carolina. It will prohibit the use of mountaintop removal derived coal in existing power plants in our state, and it will divest state employee pension plans from all fossil fuel industries. In addition, we have a list of demands that oppose some of the backwards environmental legislation that have been proposed in the North Carolina General Assembly in this and previous sessions that would roll back efficiency measures, building codes, and environmental regulations, including one bill that passed in 2011 that makes it illegal for any government agency to accurately report the rate of sea level rise in a government document. This bill has made North Carolina a mockery in the national and international communities and a source of late-night talk show host humor. But there's really nothing funny about hiding our heads in the sand over the issue of climate change at this late date. So we're here today to take our heads out of the sand and to confront the reality of climate change by continuing to build a powerful movement that can't be ignored or denied any longer. We're going to take this movement and this issue of climate change out of the human interest and hobby sections of the newspaper and put it on the front page where it belongs. Right on. It's okay to cheer. Yeah. For more information and literature about the scheduling of the Climate Convergence on Raleigh and about our platform, please come to the information table here and also sign our petition on the Efficient and Affordable Energy Rates Bill and take copies to circulate. Thank you all. And I'd like to introduce some of our other speakers now. We have Jill Gottesman of the Wilderness Society. Yay.
Thank you, Avram. My name is Jill Gottesman, and I'm with the Wilderness Society's Southern Appalachian Regional Office right here in Sylva, actually right 2 blocks down. We are a national conservation organization working to protect wilderness and inspire Americans to care for our wild places. I've come today to show my support for my friends and neighbors who are starting their journey to Raleigh for the Climate Convergence at the state capitol. It is my hope that this gathering of citizens from all over North Carolina will impress upon our state government the critical nature of climate change and the overwhelming need for forward-thinking policy from our elected representatives. Climate change refers to gradually warming temperatures that are causing many other changes across the planet, including drier temperatures and more severe storm events here in the southeastern United States. Changes to things we care about, land, water, wildlife, and the people who depend on them, demand that we better understand and face the issue of climate change. The resilient, diverse, and temperate forests of the southeastern United States, and specifically here in western North Carolina, are key to mitigating the effects of climate change. The directionality of our ranges help plant and animal species adapt to changing weather and moisture. Our southeastern forests, and primarily the oldest forests, including the Nantahala around us, hold 36% of the carbon stock in the entire United States. This amount of carbon actually offsets 13% of the total emissions of the United States. It is fitting that concerned citizens who call for needed policy changes are traveling down from these ancient forested mountains that I see before me to Raleigh. The Wilderness Society joins our partners across North Carolina who are traveling to Raleigh for the Climate Convergence. We are calling for investment in renewable energy resources and responsible energy planning, specifically on public lands. We work for protection of our waterways and landscape corridors for plants and animals that must adapt to these new climate norms. By preparing and adapting lands for climate change, as well as vision and creative and necessary well-constructed public policy, we can better protect wild places and communities for these hard to predict but inevitable changes. We call on our elected leadership to address this reality. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, you. I'm sorry I mispronounced your last name. I'd like to introduce Adam Bigelow with the Jackson-Macon Conservation Alliance.
Thank you. I'm going to stand in front of the sign. Thank you, Avram, for helping to organize this great kickoff for the Climate Convergence. I'm not going to talk for a long time. I'm not going to take a lot of our time today because we don't have a lot of time. Climate change is happening and it's occurring, and we're feeling the effects of it now, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Our hope now is to try to mitigate the effects and try to adapt ourselves and our environments to live in this new normal. We have the benefit and joy of living here in the southern Appalachian Mountains with the most temperate forest, plant and animal diversity anywhere in the world. I'd argue with people in Washington State, Japan and China that this is the center for diversity, and I love living here, especially in the springtime. We get to watch the spring evolve and climb up the mountainsides, but the way that the plants and animals all evolved and live together is being affected right now with different temperature regimes over the winter, warmer temperatures. Some synchronous events like insect hatchings that meet up with a migratory bird passage are coming out of timing, so that we are left with an influx of insects with more mass than we have had to deal with. And maybe the bird populations are declining because they're not getting the protein that they would have got if they had met up, and the timing of the insect release and the migration is matched like it has been throughout their entire evolution. But due to the effects of burning fossil fuel energy, coal and oil, due to the effects of our economy of wastefulness, as Wendell Berry calls it, and due to the effects of our own culture of convenience, we are changing the environment so rapidly that even the model projections of scientists 10 and 15 years ago, they were wrong, and that the predictions they made then of the Northwest Passage being open or Arctic ice sheets melting off are happening more rapidly than they even predicted 10 or 15 years ago. Again, we don't have time to talk about developing new technologies. We don't need new technologies. All the technology we need to move into a sustainable future are ready now and off the shelf. The thing that we are lacking is political will and individual will to make the necessary changes. A twofold approach could have a huge impact on the way we use energy and the sources of our energy. If we were to transition today all of our energy production away from fossil fuels and onto renewable technologies, solar and wind and other technologies like geothermal and micro hydro, small scale hydrological, if we transition from our centralized generating of electricity through fossil fuels to a decentralized generating of electricity through renewables, where we use the electricity where we're generating it, boom, we could be off fossil fuels like that. And the next step could be we transition our method and modes of transportation off of fossil fuels, off of a technology that's 100 years old or more, that hasn't really advanced that much, to electric vehicles running off of renewable energy. Those two shifts, very huge in the undertaking, but those two shifts could go a long way to making sure that these beautiful southern Appalachian Mountains that we love to live in get to remain beautiful and culturally, ethnically, and socially diverse, as well as ecologically diverse. Other things that would need to happen are increasing our grid capacity to handle the different sources of electricity. But those two shifts could go a long way to helping mitigate the changes that are happening, and could go a long way to helping us remain able to live and grow our culture in the world. And I just really encourage you guys to learn, to educate yourself, to join in actions such as the Climate Convergence, and to do everything that you can to try to help us adapt and mitigate the changes that are coming, because they're coming really quickly. And I love the balsam mountains and the dark trees on the top of the mountain, but I'm afraid that we're going to see them go away in my lifetime, and that's not a happy thought. It's springtime, and springtime everything is possible. It's possible for us to change the way we do things. In the build up to World War II, we switched our factories through a federal mandate from building cars and automobiles to developing the war machinery necessary for the United States to enter into World War II. In 3 months, they transitioned factories building cars to building bombers and bombs. So imagine what we could do if we had the political and social will to make the changes. We could transition our factories from making bombs into making windmills and solar panels. We would bring money and the development of jobs and energy here in the United States, and also benefit the entire world. We lead the way in being wasteful. We lead the way in using the majority of the world's resources. There's no reason we can't lead the way in making this change to a sustainable future. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Next, I would like to introduce Roger Clapp.
Roger. Thank you, Avram. Thank you for organizing this event. And thank you to my fellow environmentalists for coming on out and standing up for this climate change program in Raleigh. I'm interested, when you see me coming, I'm interested in water and water resources. And I want to mention 3 things that kind of bring climate change home to us here in Jackson County. One of them will be personal. In this last year, we had something that we're going to go back and look at, but it was pretty much unprecedented. We had 4 days of extreme rainfall in January, which came to a soil water event, soil water extreme event, which meant landslides throughout this county. And we're now just coming to grips with the reality that the roads that we built may not be as stable, may not hold up in the future as we had planned. We need to address that. The second item, in 2007 and in 2008, there was a severe drought here. A drought around here means a dry summer, followed by a dry winter, followed by a dry summer again. And what did we have to do? We had to ship water into at least one community because all of their wells went dry. We need to go back and look at those data, find out what the conditions are for that sort of an event, and prepare for it. Because I believe in the future it's climate variability that we've got to plan for. Now the last one is kind of personal. As far as temperatures, you and I can't really see the creeping temperature from year to year. We might argue on New Year's Eve, oh, it got 1/1000th of a degree warmer or 100th of a degree warmer. There's not a lot of use of that. But if you look at long-range records, one is sea level rise, which needs to be accurately reported for North Carolina to be taken seriously. Another one is a change in glaciers all through the United States. You go to Glacier National Park in midsummer and you're lucky, you have to travel quite a ways to see a glacier. I go back to my youth. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, and I can remember that winters were cold enough that I invested in hockey ice skates so I could skate on the Potomac River and on the C&O Canal. So times have changed in my lifetime. Times are continuing to change through the lifetimes of our children and our grandchildren. We need to look at it. We need to have our eyes open and look at these changes and then mitigate and adapt. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. And I'd like to introduce now Ken Brown with the Western North Carolina Alliance.
Hi there. Thanks, Avram, for putting this together. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. This is one of the more important issues I believe we face today, and some of the things that have been brought up here have covered most of the bases, but I wanted to bring up some statistical stuff that has been put out by the government and whatnot. And you can see the t-shirt I'm wearing, which says renewable energy is American security. And as the Pentagon and the U.S. military have recognized in the last few years that global warming is a threat to national security. This is, in my mind, one of the more important things that we should put out there, because as our government, our leaders, our U.S. military, and folks like that have taken up this issue as something that is of this magnitude and importance, we must say something about this. The naysayers are for continually coming up with new data. In the last 10 years, of course, since 1998 was the warmest year on record worldwide. Atmospheric temperatures have leveled out somewhat, but the oceanic temperatures have increased gradually on the same scale. And so now there's a lot of data that's saying that the oceans are absorbing much of this temperature rise, and this is a real disaster in the making. So as we look forward into the future to think about what we can do to combat this this idea that global warming is not a threat, is not real. We must look at these other forms, these other databases, and depend on our science as we have never before to fight this threat. And further, you know, the global warming is a real threat. It is not something perceived. We can see it happening around us on a daily basis, and I, for one, am as concerned that the issue is being misappropriated by certain entities in the government and private sector, so that we're fighting a battle here against a foe that has a lot more money and a lot more influence than we have. So we need to band together and work as a unit to fight this threat.
Yep.
Thank you. And now I want to ask our camera person, Ron Robinson, to come and speak.
Yay.
Thanks, Avram. It's so good to see everybody here. I'm just going to say a couple of things. One, if we're going to do anything, we've got to start local, right? We've all seen those stickers that say start local. The first thing that we can do is look at how effective we are at setting up energy and energy conservation within our own homes, helping our neighbors to do the same. To the extent that we can do that, to the extent that we can start looking at how energy efficient our own homes are, that's a great place to start. Now I have a question for you. How many of you feel like you're not being heard? Anybody feel like you're not being heard? How many of you have tried to talk to Duke Energy and not be heard? Can I see a show of hands? Well, this is a place to start. We need to take on the evil empire, Duke Energy. And the only way we can do that is by standing up, making ourselves energy efficient, and then going to Raleigh and telling Duke and the Public Service Commission, Duke Energy, that we want to see positive changes when it comes to the way energy is being utilized. I have a house that's passive solar and active solar. When I first started with my house, I was paying $35 a month in energy bills. Well, Duke saw that they needed to do something about that, So I went to $45, $55, and now I'm at $65 a month. Now that's nothing really, but the point of the matter is, no matter how hard we try to be energy efficient, the evil empire is going to find a way to take our money away from us anyway, unless we stand up and do something about it. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to Raleigh, and I hope everybody here comes to Raleigh with us to say enough is enough. Do you agree? Enough's enough?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you, Ron.
You're very welcome.
We have one more speaker, a very important speaker, Garrett Wiki, who's a member of the College Democrats at WCU.
Western Carolina, yeah. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. As Avram said, my name is Garrett Wiki. I'm president of College Democrats of Western Carolina. Many thanks to the Canary Coalition and all the other admirable environmental groups who brought this event to fruition. The work you're doing here is a true investment for the future like no other issue. It's difficult to find an issue that affects us more immediately and more universally than climate change. I spoke last night over Facebook to Josh Fernandez, who is president of UNC Asheville Democrats and the new chairman of the Environmental Caucus of College Democrats of North Carolina. Josh called H401 S362 a forward-thinking bill, and I could not agree more. Amid the seemingly endless train of Tea Party politics streaming from Raleigh since November, this bill represents the hope of rationality in a state in urgent need of solid progressive leadership. On behalf of College Democrats of WCU, I would like to thank all groups here for your commitment to building an energy-efficient North Carolina. With organization and passion, we can achieve a better, more sustainable future. As I mentioned before, however, the misled policies coming from the General Assembly are not restricted to environmental issues alone. The new powers that be have introduced other measures which are contrary to our values as progressive Americans, most glaringly Senate Bills 666 and 667, which propose to severely restrict student voting in several ways. And obviously, damaging student voting would damage the environmental cause. I would urge you to learn more about this legislation and to contact your representatives who stand behind it. Easy access to voting is a crucial and fundamental aspect of a healthy democracy, and a healthy democracy is undermined by policies such as the imposition of a tax on students who choose to vote where they go to school. These bills have the potential to harm all students in North Carolina, regardless of whether they are registered as Democrats or Republicans, and it is our civic duty to oppose obstacles to voting. As such, the College Democrats of North Carolina have organized a statewide day of action for this Wednesday, April 17th. I would like to extend our invitation to anyone who is interested to join myself and the WCU College Dems on the UC lawn this Wednesday from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. to voice our opposition to this outrageous legislation. Thank you for your time. Continue to fight the progressive fight, and take heart in remembering that we, the people, will always determine the final say. Thank you.
Thank you, Garrett. And we have one more speaker, I'm sorry, who just showed up, Carolyn Cagle, who's representing the Jackson County Democrats.
Good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see everyone turned out this morning for this important event. Democrats have always been strong supporters of protecting the environment, and the environment has always been a major part of our party platform. We also have always promoted political candidates who are environmentally conscious. You know, the environment really should not be a political issue. We all live on Earth and have a vested interest in protecting it. Thank you.
I want to say that this is a nonpartisan event that we're at, and that everybody knows about this event. And if there are any Republicans out there who would like to speak, who are here, please step forward. Thank you all for coming, and onward to Raleigh.
Yay!
Give us
speech, man. You write that last one?
Very nice.
Good. Sorry.
Western Carolina.
Yes, ma'am. Well, the UC Lawn, the University Center. That's where it's going to be.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.